From the News Radio 1120 and 93.7 FM KPNW studios, I'm Bill London. This look at the news brought to you by Dr. Michael Bratland of Chris Dental, where if you call him today, he'll see you today. And now they use space-age lasers to clean your teeth. And if you think I'm joking, I don't know what to say. All right, here's a look at the stories we're following. So, Oregon 4th District Congresswoman Val Hoyle has spent almost a year, or had, refusing to turn over her personal electronics devices to the Bureau of Labor and Industries, where she used to be the labor commissioner, even though she had been using those devices for agency business as the labor commissioner. And then she only turned over the text messages after over 10 months when they had been gone through by her personal lawyer, and her lawyer decided the messages to turn over. Yeah, okay, nothing weird going on there. And that was even though Boley had demanded to vet all of the messages first and firsthand. But of course, well, can't do that. So Boley has now released some of the messages that they did receive, and it shows that Hoyle not only frequently texted with mega money political donor Rosa Cesaris, who also founded the legally challenged and tax evading pot change LaModa, but that their relationship also turned out to be, shall we say, fairly cozy. In these messages, Hoyle, for instance, shares a bill with Cesaris to get her feedback. And Cesaris says, don't vote for it. And the reason for that is because, well, it would increase Cesaris' taxes. In another exchange, Cesaris asked Hoyle to write her a letter of recommendation to get on a national cannabis board, which Hoyle dutifully agrees to do. In one exchange, to try and get grant money from the city of Portland for Endeavor, a nonprofit program for internships in the pot industry, the text message reads in part from Cesaris, "Need a recommendation letter for the city of Portland, ! Hoyle, okay. Hoyle, to whom and what points do you need made?" Now, it should be interesting to mention that Hoyle in the past said that she didn't even remember whether she'd talked to Cesaris about a grant for Cesaris's nonprofit Endeavor, even though Hoyle gave Endeavor and Cesaris a $500,000 grant that Hoyle pushed through Boley, skirting the agency protocols, even overruling the agency's dismissal of the grant application. And she gave that $554,000 grant to Endeavor in only 2 weeks after being asked. When does that ever happen? Now, the text messages between Hoyle and Cesaris shows not only did Cesaris and Hoyle text about the Endeavor grant, but also with the co-founder of Endeavor. That would be Laura Vegas. Now, she was a co-founder and sends 3 paragraphs to Hoyle right after Cesaris' text message to guide Hoyle as to how to write the letter and what she wants in it for the Portland grants. She writes, quote, "We are looking for a letter of support that highlights the work that we have done with Boley," that's the agency Hoyle was running, "and our efforts to create the Cannabis Apprenticeship Program, a testimony to support the good work Endeavor will do in transforming the cannabis workspace, and any observations about Endeavor or our personal dedication and passion for creating a strong industry through positive and equitable relationship." Why the hell didn't she just write it for her? Now, Hoyle is currently being scrutinized in the federal investigation into Cesaris and LaModa and their connection with Boley while it was under Hoyle's leadership, and the LaModa relationship with former Oregon Secretary of State Shemia Fagan that gave Fagan, while she was Secretary of State, a quiet $10,000 a month salary to work as a consultant for them. Now, LaModa and Cesaris in particular, kind of interesting. They donated well over $100,000 to several Democratic lawmakers, Val Hoyle being one of them, now Governor Tina Kotek being one of them, and former Secretary of State Shemia Fagan. And she didn't donate it by check or credit card or anything like that. No, she delivered it to them in brown paper bags full of cash. Gee, why would the feds be looking at that? Why would they be looking at a sitting congresswoman for that? I don't know. Inquiring minds. So if two of the state's largest electric utilities get what they're asking for, about 1.5 million customers in Oregon will be paying 40% more for electricity next year than they did just 3 years ago. Portland General Electric and Pacific Power say, well, we need infrastructure and our insurance rates have gone up. But Oregon Citizens Utility Board says the companies are using the rate hikes to make massive investments in their infrastructure in a too short period, mainly to drive their stock prices, as well as create slush funds for wildfire payouts in the future. That would be directed directly at Pacific Power because, well, they've lost a whole lot of lawsuits and many millions of dollars because they refused to follow the state's lead when the state said, you know, you need to turn off your electricity before we get these storms on Labor Day of 2020. And they didn't do that, and the power lines came down and set massive wildfires. Anyway, both utilities are trying to get approval of whopping increases from the Oregon Public Utilities Commission. Now, the Citizens Utility Board, which is kind of a watchdog, says, unfortunately, we've seen a growing pattern of Oregon's for-profit utilities asking for 20% increases nearly every year for the last 4 years. This is a call to Oregon regulators to implement a cap for-profit utilities. The CUB says the need to push back on PGE and Pacific Power is due to skyrocketing rates that led to thousands of customers' power being shut off after the January ice storms. In April, 4,700 customers for PGE ended up getting their power shut off due to non-payments. That is the most ever in 1 month, a record. And it was because, well, everybody's power rates soared because it was disturbingly cold. And of course, the way that these rates go into effect is at the very beginning and the coldest part of the year. The utilities like it that way since it drives their stock prices up because, oh, look how good we did in the first quarter when typically most businesses are kind of flat. None of the latest rate requests, by the way, from the two utilities are driven at all by the cost of actually, producing electricity. Well, the vast majority of Oregon is at high or extreme wildfire risk heading into the year's hottest month. That would be, well, here, August. And this is as the state is nearing a modern record for the most acres burned in a season. The National Interagency Fire Center classified every part of Oregon except the very northwest corner at elevated risk for wildfire in August and September. State climatologist Larry O'Neill said the only part of Oregon at normal fire danger is, well, that northwest corner. And he says he hopes for no significant lightning storms to bring new fires. Yeah, you're not the only one, Larry. And also that we have no east winds. Now, east winds here in Oregon are really horrible because they generally happen in summer and they're Oregon's greatest wildfire threat because they're hot, they're dry, they're very strong winds, and what they do is they cause already burning fires to just essentially erupt, like they did in Labor Day of 2020, when pretty much Oregon was on fire. The major wildfire disasters in recent years, as a matter of fact, 2020 and 2022, were caused by east winds, and they usually reach their peak in early September, right around Labor Day. So far this year, Oregon has seen 1.38 million acres burn so far. The modern record is 1.53 million acres, which was set back in 2012. Of course, a big part of the reason that we're having these extreme wildfires is simply because the United States Forest Service, when there's a fire on their property, they just sit and watch it and do very little to fight it. The other main issue is the fact is that Oregon does a horrible job, along with the U.S. Forest Service, the BLM, and the Oregon Department of Forestry, in actually managing our forests, like, for instance, thinning trees, clearing brush, doing prescribed burns, doing all the things that keep forests healthy and strengthen them against wildfires. But we wouldn't want to do that because, after all, it angers the radical environmentalists in the state. And they'll bring a suit to stop it because of, well, it could endanger a red vole. That's a rodent, by the way. Well, it's nice to say, we're below average. We're below average. Oregon's infrastructure remains mediocre and earned an overall C- according to the new 2024 report card released by the American Society of Civil Engineers. Now, this includes just all sorts of things dealing with infrastructure, and they're graded on an A to F scale, just like grade school and junior high and high school. No system in Oregon at all was graded above AC. The report card graded Oregon's aviation infrastructure C-, bridges C-, dams D+, drinking water C, energy C-, inland waterways C, ports C-, roads C, stormwater D, transit D, wastewater D. The ASCE looked at infrastructure capacity, physical condition, current level of funding from all levels of government compared to need, the extent that public safety is jeopardized by an infrastructure system condition, and the system's resilience and innovation. Like I said, we're below average. We're below average. You know, it's interesting. They gave wastewater a D+, and people always ask, why is it when it rains really hard that our local sewage treatment plants dump millions of gallons of raw sewage into our waterways? D+, kids, D+. So after the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Grants Pass v. Johnson that simply upended lower court restrictions on cities dealing with homeless camping and allowing cities and counties more leeway, well, Oregon's top Democrats say, and are showing at least, no sign they are going to prioritize any changes next year to a law that mirrored those lower court restrictions, limiting how cities in Oregon can regulate homeless camping. That's according to the leaders of the Oregon House and Senate. They say, we are not going to create any kind of group to take up that matter. Senate President Rob Wagner, the Democrat from Lake Oswego, and House Speaker Julie Fahey, the Democrat from Eugene, say that any debate over changes to the law, they don't need a work group, like many in the Democratic Party are actually requesting, and the Republicans as well. Governor Kotek, who was actually the author of the statute I referred to, just simply said, well, she'll consider any ideas the lawmakers send her way. A lot of people in Oregon are saying our homeless situation is utterly out of control. As a matter of fact, it's likely that a number of our wildfires that are currently burning in the state were actually caused by homeless campers on state and federal lands. So let's compare and contrast that to what uber-liberal governor of California, Gavin Newsom, did. Right after, about a month after the Supreme Court rolled out their decision, Gavin Newsom signed an executive order telling state agencies to remove all homeless camps throughout California on state lands. That was after the Supreme Court essentially granted state and local authorities the power to clear encampments. Newsom's executive order mandated that state agencies and departments adopt policies to clear camps on all state property, and it also encouraged local governments to do the same thing. I'll quote, "This executive order directs state agencies to move urgently to address dangerous encampments while supporting and assisting the individuals living in them, and provides guidance for cities and counties to do the same." According to Newsom, the state has been hard at work to address this crisis on our streets. There are simply no more excuses. It's time for everyone to do their part. In other words, clear them out. That move came less than 30 days after the Supreme Court decided enough's enough. And of course, what is Oregon going to do? Well, become a sanctuary state for more of the homeless. So this is kind of interesting. So Bend is in Central Oregon. It's a lovely community. I actually really like Bend. And earlier this week, 10,000 Pacific Power customers lost all of their service in Bend on Tuesday morning. And it had to do with a particular culprit. We'll get to that in a second. Now, the outages started at 7:35 in the morning, and they weren't all cleared up until sometime about 6 p.m. And the cause? A squirrel. A squirrel got into the substation serving the area, caused damage, resulting in a blown fuse that took a bunch of the substation down and offline. Took them, 10 and a half hours to get everything back online? Now, here's the interesting part. Squirrels, believe it or not, are ranked second in the list of top causes of power outages across the United States. That's according to the American Public Power Association. Several years ago, the APPA started keeping track of what it called the Squirrel Index. It's a thing, and it measures the power outages that squirrels cause. Recently, the system reported 1.6 squirrel-related outages for every 1,000 customers, estimating 240,000 squirrel-caused outages across the nation. And if you're still kind of questioning the power that these little furry, cuter rats cause on our infrastructure, keep in mind that squirrels actually brought the NASDAQ stock market down not once, but twice. The first one was in 1987. Wall Street went down because of squirrels. It happened a second time in 1994. And if you actually do a Google search for squirrel outage, they turn up all over the place. It's actually pretty amazing. Squirrels damage electrical distribution facilities because they tunnel their way into transformers because it's nice and warm in there. Oh, look, it's warm. And the buzzing kind of makes me sleepy. And then they chew through electrical installation, and then they come in contact with a conductor, and then, the squirrel explodes, and so does the substation. And it causes the outages. Squirrels, number 2 on the list nationally for power outages. Who'da thunk? All right, this look at the news brought to you by Dr. Michael Bratland of Chris Dental, who's just genuinely a good dude. All right, Rick, time for you to roll out the reel.